Good evening, everyone. Tonight is Tuesday, January 27th, 2026. I'll call the North Liberty City Council meeting to order. Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Fortney. Here. Leibold.
Here.
Park.
Here.
Smith.
Here.
Wason.
Here. Thank you. Item 3 is approval of the agenda. There are no changes that I'm aware of. Could I have a motion for approval, please?
So moved.
Second. Moved by Park, seconded by Leibold. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Our agenda is approved. Item 4 is our consent agenda. Anything on there to talk about? Seeing none, could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
By Wason, seconded by Smith. Any questions? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda carries. Item 5 is public comment. Now it's time for anyone in the audience wishing to address council on an item that's not already labeled for public comment. Now is your time. Seeing no one rush to the podium, I'll close public comment and move to Josiah, the engineer's report, please.
Thanks, Mayor. One update for the council tonight. Excuse me. So the Interstate 380 and the Penn Street Bridge project we talked about a little bit last meeting. Since then, the pre-construction meeting's been scheduled, so that'll be in the first week of February. So they're getting geared up to get going. I've talked to the contractor. There's a couple big overarching goals that they have this season, and I was going to pass those along. First of all, there's going to be a couple night closures next week of the bridge. 2 nights, 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. They're setting beams for the new half of the bridge that they're getting started. So that's a kind of a big component of them getting going on the job. The next big movement traffic-wise is late March. They'll move southbound traffic on 380. They'll shift it over to the north side, so they'll shift the traffic over. Still 2 lanes on 380, but a shift. All the ramps are currently open at Penn Street, and they are going to remain open for quite a while. They're looking at closing the northbound off-ramp in July, and then about 2 or 3 weeks later, closing the southbound on-ramp, so both ramps on the south side of the bridge. So as of right now, they're planning to have those remain open until about July, and then they'll both be closed, like the north side was closed last year for 2 or 3 months for reconstruction. So that'll be similar. And then at the end of this year, 2026, that job, they're supposed to be essentially complete. So that's the bridge, the interchange at Penn Street, all the lane widening on 380, and their Wright Brothers Bridge up in Cedar Rapids. But so this is their final season to get that all wrapped up. That's what they're looking to do. So that's all I have tonight, Mayor.
That's awesome. Thanks for stepping out of the bounds there a little bit to provide that update. Do you guys have any questions for Josiah? Seeing none. Ryan, anything to report outside of budget stuff in a minute?
No, I'm going to hold all my comments for the budget.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Can't wait. The only thing I have, just a couple of things, or one thing I did is went to the Stone Soup Supper last night, hosted at Centennial Park, and for benefit of the food pantry, but otherwise been kind of quiet here on this end. I'll turn it over to item 9, which is council reports. Are there any things to update our staff and council and the public on that you've been doing outside of city council meetings?
I have had a couple meetings for the MPO about the nominating committee for the chair and co-chair, and we will hopefully take care of all that tomorrow afternoon. And then I attended the EMA meeting last week. It was basically the budget hearing, so we've set the budget for the upcoming fiscal year. It's fairly flat other than insurance and salary increases, but otherwise it's pretty flat. They're not anticipating any new programs. And then we're going to set the bids for the new storage building actually next week for that meeting.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I attended the, North Liberty Lunch Connections at Bulldogs and heard from Greater IC about the small business grants available to North Liberty businesses and met a new chiropractor in town named Dr. Easy, is his name for short. Dr. Easy's starting a new practice here and was excited about the opportunity to apply for the grant. And hopefully he'll get that, and it'll help him, just move into North Liberty into his new spot. So that was fun, and that's all I have.
Thanks, Paul.
For me, Mayor, attended the same luncheon with Paul. Great event. I did have a breakfast meeting with just a member of the UI leadership team last week. It was just an opportunity to exchange and continue to build relationships with the University of Iowa. So it was fun. It was effective, and I look forward to the next opportunity. And then I would be remiss, and I'm surprised that you missed it, but congratulations to the Liberty High School dance team on their way to the national championships down in Florida this week. So all the dancers, coaches, parents, support staff that are supporting that group, I know they are very excited, and it's quite an honor to attend the national championships. So congratulations to them. That's it for me, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything, Tanya? All right. I'll move on to item 10 then. Ryan, this is our FY27 budget, and I'll let you take it from here. Just move on to item A,
Okay.
capital improvements plan.
Thank you. First of all, thanks everyone for our discussion last week. A real brief recap of that as we got through the operation side of the budget. Our management team feels good about that, and we appreciate the dialogue. We invited a few of our management team members back this evening to talk more specifically about some of the larger capital projects, essentially non-equipment type projects that may involve some borrowing or significant sized public projects. So what I would like to do with the capital projects, I'm just going to talk off the CIP here, or shortened version of the CIP. And I'd just like to go down in order with the exception of the fire department. I think I'll wait to talk about that one last because it'll be then a nice segue into the local option sales tax discussion. So from the community center standpoint, and we have Jenny Garner and Shelley Simpson here this evening, but we have a couple of projects, or 4 projects to be precise, proposed. The first is replacement of some indoor pool filters. These are aging filters, and talking to Shelley today, we're hoping that they'll get to the fiscal year. If not, we may have to take action a little quicker than FY 27. But that is the plan at this point, and that would be funded with the help of the the help of hotel motel tax. The big one at the community center, and one we've talked about for a couple years now, or at least it's been on our radar, is the remodel of the aquatic center locker rooms. These are some of the most used locker rooms in the facility. They're pretty dingy, if I could say, and in need of some attention. They continue to give our maintenance folks folks have to put a lot of effort into maintaining those facilities, and it's frankly time to upgrade those. It's a very expensive project, approaching $1 million, but it would essentially be a remodel of both the men's and women's locker rooms there, right next to the indoor pool. We are calling for $50,000 allocation for maintenance, and right now we're looking at potentially replacement of the curtains in the gymnasiums. We are a little skeptical of saying that will be the project for sure, simply because, much like these pool filters, if something comes up, we want to have a little wiggle room to prioritize that. The point is really to get it in that community center project list so you can and make sure we have funding for when these types of things come up. And that model is in your packet. It's called the Community Center Capital Projects Model. And then lastly, this is a project that would really rely on grant funding or fundraising. We received a small grant from a library group. Forgive me, Jenny, you can mention it when you come up here. I forget which group it is, but to convert and upgrade some restrooms, the restrooms at the library, and that would also then install an adult changing table, which is something that would benefit the library. So those are, and again, that's grant dependent. You're not seeing any city funds being proposed for that. That would depend on what outside sources of funding we could receive. So those are the 4 projects within the community center facility that we're considering this year. And I guess we would offer an opportunity for questions and feedback from the group. Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks, Jenny.
And if there's no feedback, I can keep going.
Let's keep rolling along.
Okay, so let's, again, like I mentioned, we're going to skip fire. We're going to jump down to parks. And Guy Goldsmith is ill this evening, but he has joined us, hopefully from the comfort of his home. He is on the Teams meeting and is able to answer some questions if there are any. The first one on here is the park shop, and we've talked an expansion of the park shop, and we've talked a little bit about this around this dais, and we continue at the staff level to evaluate what our options are. But the idea here is to add on to the existing park shop, at the same time add on to our existing water department shop, so that when we're ready to tear down that fire facility, the current fire station, we can relocate the fire department at these two, basically at the civic or at the Public Works campus along Front Street, so that they can operate out of that area while the new building is being constructed. Now, these projects were actually both in the FY27 CIP last year. If this is a feasible avenue to go, and again, we're still trying to coordinate with Shive Hattery and talk a little bit internally on how this would look. It's unfortunately, it looks pretty simple when you're looking at a map and showing this needs to go here and this needs to go here, but there's some complications to it. So we're working through those details, but ultimately, if the council is amenable to this concept and it works, we may be asking approval to move ahead even quicker than FY27. I know there's some questions on that one, so we'll come back to that. I'll just get through the rest of these projects. The next one on the list is replacing the playground equipment at the community center playground, which is a very popular playground within our community. This is just on would be the north side of the community center. There's a photo or an image of what Guy and his team are going to be proposing to the park board if this project is approved. It's a significant investment of $255,000. The majority of that would come from franchise fees, while a small portion of that, about $50,000, would come from the hotel motel tax. And then we have 2 trail projects proposed for this year. The first is a trail segment on North Dubuque Street, and I'm sure you're all familiar with Buck Moon Villas, the subdivision that's being constructed there now. As part of their development, they put in the trail along Dubuque Street. This particular project would then bring that trail south to get it, fill the last gap there, and connect it to the trail on Central Way. It would cross, I believe it crosses a railroad track, if I'm not mistaken, and also it would come across the properties of 2 energy stations there. And then the final trail project is a big one, and one we have some grant funding for, about $450,000 in grant funding for this $800,000 project. But it would it would bring the Forever Green Trail from the roundabout construction. So once that complete, bringing it from the roundabout itself east all the way to the existing trail on Forever Green Road. So it would be a great tie-in to what is there now and will be there after this year, and then a great segue into the Ranchaw Way Phase 6 project, which happens next year, 2027. It would be a trail that connects Forever Green all along to Ranchaw Way. So those are the park projects proposed in this year's CIP.
Can you help us understand the needs that the Parks Department is facing and needing with this addition?
Sure, and a couple of you have toured the parks facility recently. This addition would be somewhere around 5,000 square feet plus or minus, and would provide additional storage and workspace for the crews. If you go into their shop right now, you would see that they are using every single inch of it. And as their responsibilities continue to grow with additional trails, additional landscaping, additional parks, so does the need for that equipment and a place to store it. And Guy, if you're willing and able, if you have anything to add to that, we'd appreciate hearing from you.
Sure. Good evening, Mayor, City Council. I appreciate you meeting me via Teams tonight. Yes, the Parks Edition is something we've been looking forward to for quite a few years now. Of course, you have to prioritize, but we're at that point now where we're kind of busting at the seams, if I might say, in our current shop. I think an addition would be great, and maybe doing some work to our existing shop to help make that a little more efficient as well might be another option. But like Ryan said, we are going through a bunch of options and where that layout might be. I mean, we do have some hurdles to maybe get over, and that is because we are kind of right on top of the old infrastructure of the existing sewer plant. And there's a water main that would have to be relocated if we went with to the north side. We're proposing maybe going to the south side, but that's some discussion we're going to have internally before we get to that point. Any questions?
I don't see any, Guy. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for staying home.
You bet.
Anything else for Ryan on this?
So Ryan, on parks, a couple things for me. First, I think it's a great idea that we are going to use these facilities, or at least try to get them constructed for the relocation of fire. There would be a significant cost savings in us doing that over the time of the project for the fire station, so that we're not renting facility space, large facility space. That would be extremely expensive. So I just want my colleagues up here to really think about that, dive into that a minute. If we had to go out and rent, space to do this, it would just be money thrown away in rent. So that's a big deciding factor for me. Go ahead, Ryan.
If I could just add on to that, I think finding a space in a suitable location would probably be another challenge.
Agreed. And then another piece to the parks facility, I know they do a lot of their own work. They work on their equipment. They fabricate. They work with all of these other departments in projects and things, and fixing and making our equipment last much longer than what ordinarily would be without that work. So I think that space to me is long overdue. One piece, Guy, that I put in a memo or in an email to colleagues and Ryan today was, I'm surprised to not see the Skelly Field and Penn Meadows lighting projects in here. It's something we've talked about for quite a while. I know the response from staff was there just hasn't been conversations with NLCBS about the original idea of cost share. We did a cost share for the bathrooms facility and the, what am I blanking?
Restroom.
Yeah, the restrooms
Restrooms,
and
concession.
Concession. There, that's the term, concession. Thank you. And that worked out very well. To me, Penn Meadows, up until Hy-Vee Center, was really the draw to the town. The majority of our weekend usage and folks coming to our community on the weekends, especially in baseball season, softball season, are Penn Meadows fields. That's where we're seeing the largest draw to our community to this point. Lights on Skelly Field, as well as the largest Penn Meadows field, I think opens up additional opportunity for folks to stay here, frequent our one hotel, hopefully soon to be other hotels that will be coming to the area. And I just think we're missing the mark on the lighting project. And I would like to see that not put in FY27, but to see it disappear from the 5-year plan. I think we're missing the mark there. Those are my comments, Mayor. Thank you.
Thanks, Brian. Anyone else? Any other comments?
I think I would just add for the fire station that I don't think it's reasonable for them to try and function out of the space as construction is going on. I think sounds like we're kind of past that, but I know that was being considered at one point. I don't see that as being an option.
We'll have to just wait and see how this fire study turns out, but it doesn't seem like that's the path to go down.
Yeah, we agree.
Yeah.
It's a, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit, but we do think for us to get the best, most usable facility, it makes sense to get them out of there and have a blank canvas.
I agree.
Yeah. Well, if there are no more comments on parks, I'll move to the street projects. And Michael Pentecost is with us this evening. 3 of them on here that we want to bring to your attention. The first is the extension of Commercial Drive, and I think most of you were on council when we acquired a small piece of property just north of or adjacent to Zeller Street, on the north side of Zeller Street, that would allow us to push Commercial Drive through. And this has been in the CIP for a couple years now, and we're proposing to use our street repair program. So this is cash on hand to accomplish this smaller project, and we'd like to get it out of the way before we start significant work on Rancho Way next year. The next project on the list here is East Forever Green Road. This is also one that we've approved some conceptual design work for now, and it's a joint project with Coralville. So this project is actually going to be going out for bid in FY27. We have $2.5 million from the feds on this project, and then the remainder of the project would be split 50-50 between us and the city of Coralville. And then lastly, Rancho Way. Again, we're in the midst of design here, and the idea would be to move forward with construction in FY27. Significantly sized project of almost $14 million. I want to get the number correct on federal dollars here. We have $2.9 million in federal dollars for this project. So a significant amount of federal participation there. And there again, that much like, that'll have a similar path as did the Forever Green Road Jasper Roundabout project this past year. We'll be designing it, going out for bid later this year. Those are the street projects.
I think we asked about it before, but we're sure the Commercial Drive is far enough back from Ranshaw that it's not going to cause a backup.
I will let Josiah answer that unless you want me to take a shot at it. But
Go ahead, I'm waiting for it to pull up.
okay, before we pulled the trigger on that project, we made sure we did the study to make sure there wouldn't be any implications there. So we feel confident that where it would come out on Zeller would be just fine.
And then people coming from Zeller, will they be able to get into the UCD area?
Yes.
Straight
Yeah.
into there? So.
Yeah, it would be one shot. I don't recall it. Would that go all the way up to Cherry Street?
Line up though, do they?
In a roundabout way through the development. It doesn't.
Okay.
It's not a direct link, but it would go up through the development and then wind out. But yes,
But you
ultimately.
can get in the parking lots and stuff. So.
Yes.
Absolutely, yeah.
That connection to Zeller is behind the turn lanes up at Zeller for Rancho.
Okay, we'll move on to wastewater, and we have Drew Lammers, our wastewater superintendent, and Michael also is involved in this project as the department that manages our collection division. But we have a gravity sewer project that we're proposing here, and it's actually it's been on our radar for quite some time. We had a study done years ago that identified potential bottlenecked areas throughout our system. You might remember this has probably been 7 to 10 years ago. We had a big project on Front Street down right across from Van Allen School where we were putting in 2 big sewer pipes. That was probably the most significant area that study told us needed to be addressed right away. This one said over time, we need to make sure and address this. And as you saw in a memo earlier today, because we were able to offer it some relief because we're now diverting some of that sewer down into Coralville's system. But eventually, as these areas develop, and I think right across from the University of Iowa's new hospital will be a big one, we're going to need a larger pipe there. And so we believe it makes sense to get on that right now. And that's the project being proposed in wastewater for FY27. Okay.
Do
Yes.
the repayments for that then come out of the sewer collection
They do.
funds? Okay.
And that is shown in the model. We have that built into the model.
Yep.
Moving on to water, Greg Metternich is here this evening. A couple projects. The first one, we probably need to retitle this. We've got it listed as a water treatment facility addition. It's really the water shop addition. This is what I spoke about earlier. This would be I think a 4,900 square foot addition to the east of the existing shop there. It's it's part of the Bryan building, right as you come into the Public Works campus. And here again, the idea is that this building, the existing piece and the new piece, would be what would house the fire station. And then we would move the stuff that's in there down to the park shop and likely bring in some temporary housing for folks. And I know Greg and Brian were talking as early as today, actually, about setting up some temporary offices within the water department itself. So still a lot of collaboration and discussion going on. But I've mentioned this, and I think I heard someone else mention it. What I really love about this group of our management team is that they're willing to work together. There are no silos there, and this is one prime example of that. Again, we're still talking through this and hope to have some further discussion with this group about both the water shop and the park shop as early as our next meeting in February, but certainly at that second meeting, if not before. And then the last project from a water standpoint is one that you're all aware of already, and we approved the design contract for it earlier in this fiscal year. We approved the facility plan very early in this fiscal year, and that is to upgrade not only the water plant itself from a capacity issue, but also drilling 2 new wells and the transmission lines then from the wells to the plant. So it's a pretty significant project, probably 3 or 4 different divisions of that project, so 3 or 4 different bids, bid packages. We are really early on in design and anticipate that to go through most of this year. Questions on water? Okay. Well, let's move into fire. And there are 2 projects, one slightly larger than the other. The first project is the Confined Space and High Angle Equipment Program. And we for the longest time, our Confined Space team included various members of our Public Works Department who were trained and had, and we had certain equipment in place for when individuals had to enter into a confined space, but it really wasn't, we were only serving ourselves there. We weren't helping other communities. It was really just for North Liberty. The chief and his department are going to take that team over, and this transition started last year, and last year's budget included a $30,000 investment into this program, and expand on it. So it's not just confined space, it's high angle rescue as well, and so that involves a great deal of equipment and training. So in total, we'll have about $65,000 invested in this. $32,000 of that is slated for FY '27. And if you want some additional specific details on that, I'm sure the chief would love to elaborate a little bit more on that. And then, of course, the other project within this department is the firehouse. And we are we've had a couple meetings before the first of the year. We've had a couple meetings since the new year, and having been a part now, this will be, I think, my 4th building project in half a dozen years or so. The early part of this process, in my opinion, is always the most painful because you're going through a lot of detail and programming and making sure everything is just so. And so we don't have an update for this group yet, but when we do, we will bring it to you and have Shive present on some of the work and kind of the final footprint of what we're proposing. But we anticipate design happening all of this year, and again, hopefully bids going out at the end of this year with construction to start next year.
How soon do you think we'll have an opportunity to hear about the plans?
Well, I don't know.
March?
I would say at least March,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Potentially, maybe even a small update when we talk about the transitioning or the building of the parks and
Okay.
water project.
Okay.
So,
Miss 18 million was the number that we had to demolish the old building and build new, correct?
yeah, that is, yes. And in fact, they said that some of the initial work they did, by demolishing the old building and starting from scratch, it's about a $300,000 savings they anticipated, rather than staging everything and trying to deal with what we had.
And when it comes to adding the extra shop space, potentially, sharing that, does that call for a different kind of building, or were what we were planning for those additions, do they just interchange, or does stuff have to get switched around to accommodate the?
We're still talking through some of that. And, one of the questions the chief was talking to me today about is, where do we store the turnout gear as an example in this, and do we need, special storage for that? So we're still talking through that, but there won't be any living quarters in the storage buildings. We would bring that in like a mobile home or something like that for the folks who are working the 24-hour shift to sleep.
Tense?
I suppose if they want to.
Ryan, on the confined space, I would like to hear from the chief. It is a smaller amount, so I don't want to belittle it, take a long time with it, chief. But years past, most of the confined space rescue needs have been city-based, meaning the folks behind you and their staffs are in confined spaces. They had their own safety and rescue team. I'm guessing, and I'm wanting to hear this from you, that the need for this team now to be fire-based is really being driven by a lot more confined spaces in the hospital, maybe?
It is hospital, and as we continue to get out in the community, we're finding more and more confined spaces, whether it's the school district, Centro, they're in quite a few buildings. And so those folks are making entries in those spaces. So it just stands to reason that if we are going to be their rescue service, which if something happens in those spaces, they're calling us, we should probably be invested in the team.
Have you guys discussed, Ryan, the option down the road of being able to bill for service, whether it's a service call or proactively billing yearly for the number of confined spaces to help fund this team long term?
We have not talked about that internally yet, but I think as we deal with the potential changes coming down the road at the state level, a lot of cities are visiting what else they can bill for, and this would certainly be a discussion point for sure.
Very good. Thanks.
Well, I think, unless there are any other questions on capital projects, I will slide into the local option sales tax discussion.
No questions for me, Ryan, just maybe more of a comment. When you look at some of these numbers, whether they're from the 32 to the $18 million range, right? No doubt a significant investment, and this group is charged with being financial stewards of that. So I just want to make sure that there's a sense of appreciation that goes out to the team internally to being, from what I've seen in my 2 years on here and this group even longer, forward-thinking, proactive approach that says, hey, you know what, these are the things we need to do at the right times and for the right reasons, because if we don't make these investments, then they become an expense, and a significant expense in both hard and soft costs. So very much appreciate the effort that everybody gets to this point. Some big numbers, yes, but also investments rather than expenses. So thank you for that.
Okay, we'll move into local option sales tax, and I would call your attention to there's a model on, it would be on, let's bring that up here. Your model should have pages at the bottom of it, a page number, and this particular one is page 17 of 30. And this is a new revenue, as you all know, for us, and we are projecting based on sales data from 2024, because that's the latest sales data that's out, that will receive about $2.8 million in this first year, starting July 1. Now, I think logic would tell you it's probably going to be a little bit more than 2.8 million, given that costs on everything have gone up. Therefore, the sales tax revenue will go up as well. But we want to be, as with all of our revenues, conservative, and so that's what we're projecting. And you'll hear me use two terms here: projected and actuals. So I want to make sure you understand what I'm trying to articulate. So in year one, we're projecting $2.8 million. Our team believes that it's important for this firehouse project to devote about 90% of the projected revenues to that project. We think if we do that, we might have the ability to do an internal loan, which would allow us to pay less interest, and the interest we would pay would be to ourselves. We still might have to do an external loan just because of the size of this project, and Tracy and I are meeting with our bond counsel think, next week to talk through that a little bit more. And we have some time, of course. But if we were to commit 90% of the projected revenues, we could have this fire station paid off in just over 7 years, which is pretty impressive for an $18 million facility. And what I tried to do in the model is show how that would impact property tax rates. And I'll get to that in a second. Let me talk through the rest of what this model is showing. And so we have 90% going to Firehouse Fund. In this particular model, we have 10% going to what we've called a neighborhood fund. We don't have a neighborhood fund established yet. The idea being part of the ballot language talked about investing money into housing, neighborhood reinvestment, and similar type projects. And so in this case, 10% of the revenue, the model is showing 10% of the revenue going to that fund of the projected revenues. Then what the model does is it would at the end of the year, we'd see what are our actual revenues versus projected. We believe that the actual revenues would be higher. And so anything above the projected revenues would then go into what we would call the local option sales tax fund and could be used at the discretion of the city council for various projects within the bounds of that initial ballot language. Now, as I said to this group already, the 10% is arbitrary. We knew there would be discussion about that. We obviously hope there's discussion about that. Our team feels pretty strongly that 90% is a good number for the firehouse project because it's a big one. It's $18 million. And it will be up to this group then to decide it's up to this group to decide how you allocate all of it, but in particular, this 10%, if you want to see something different with that, we can certainly do that. And I mentioned, I think, in the memo that I anticipate us having some discussion at our April strategic planning session about this money, and that might be a better time to dive into that. We certainly can do it now as well, but that might give the group a little bit more time to process it as well. For the budget standpoint, I think it would be important to tell us if the 90% is okay, and if you're okay with the 10%, we can do that, or we can just show that as a revenue not to be allocated or transferred anywhere. So why don't I stop there to see if there are questions on what's in this model or anything we just talked about.
Could you explain the internal loan of how you would?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to, the caveat is we need to visit with our bond counsel to make sure we're able to do it on something this large. We did an internal loan probably 10 or 15 years ago. It was a long time ago, on a much, much smaller scale, under $1 million, I think. And basically what we're doing is borrowing from other funds within the city. It could be the water fund, it could be the hotel motel fund, the general fund, it could be anything, a combination of funds. We would borrow that money from there and make sure there's still ample money in those funds so they don't go in the red. Transfer it into a project account, and then use a local option sales tax to repay those funds. And the difference between that and an external loan, of course, is the interest stays here, and we can amortize it as such as we can put, all 90% towards that repayment and get it paid off just like that. In a lot of cases, when you go onto the external market, they have prepayment penalties. So they want your interest.
And as you look at this, you may have to come up with maybe a hybrid version of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
So, and then we were able to do that because we have enough balance in the funds that we have to keep for other projects like the water and the sewer department, so that we can work on those loans as well for better rates and stuff.
Exactly. And so you, in your council packet this month, you probably saw the December revenues report. Cash on hand right now is $42 million. That's a nice chunk of funds. However, we have property taxes in for the first part of the year. We still have some bond money in that haven't spent yet on projects. And so over the course of this fiscal year, that'll come down a bit. So that's what we have to juggle and manage and make sure we never have an account that doesn't have any money in it.
And then this 90-10 kind of split is just a policy. So we would just do a resolution and we could.
Yeah, I don't even know that we would need that. And I think that, the council can decide annually, monthly, if you want, how you want to.
So easy enough to
Spend it.
adjust as we move forward.
Yes.
Yep.
So if you were not committed or wanted more time to think about that 10%, what we would show in our budget document to the state is that 10% is coming into the local option sales tax fund. It's not moving. It's staying right there.
Yeah, I think I'm just going to comment here. I think for me, Ryan, just rereading the language of what was approved by the voters and the flexibility that was intended for that, at least from my seat, I'd like it to say that not specifically directed towards the neighborhood fund. It allows that flexibility for the capital improvement plans and also neighborhood fund. So if we could just redirect that language to have lost fund as opposed to neighborhood fund. My concern is that the perception is once established, then it's going to be, hey, you know what? Oh, well, you're taken from a neighborhood fund to work on a capital improvement plan or whatever the case is. And that's not the intent of the language. The intent of the language is to have that inherent flexibility. So that's what my recommendation would be, is to change that language at the onset so that we can have that flexibility going forward.
Certainly easy enough for us to do, but I would like it to make sure everyone's in agreement with that.
I don't think it matters what it's called. We're going to have this conversation in a couple of months on what to do with monies in there anyway. So we could call it Brian's Fund if you want to.
I certainly don't want that.
I would prefer we didn't.
Yeah, I would prefer. Same.
It is in the ballot language, though, what we can spend
Yeah,
money on.
we have to work within the guidelines.
Yeah.
Right.
Brian's Fund or the neighborhood fund could be for the fire department. So
My question on the internal loan or potential of, why is it necessary to charge ourselves an interest rate?
It's the law.
That's a good reason.
So Ryan, on that topic, I guess, and it is a little more work. I would want to see if we're not going to do the internal loan, talk to bond counsel if it is possible, and we get that approval, then do this homework. Don't do it before. A comparison. So if we do not do internal loaning, what it would do to the debt service levy. So we could see if we were going to take those projects, we were going to put them on debt to see what those interest payments, could be open market on the GeoBond rates. I think that would be helpful for this group to see what the savings would be.
Yeah, and I just want to clear something up. If we went and borrowed a traditional bond, we wouldn't have to put it on we would borrow it as a GO.
Oh, gee, yeah.
Funded by local option sales tax.
Okay.
So it would still be paid by local option sales tax. But in running some real rough numbers, and I mentioned this to the mayor the other day, if we did a traditional 15-year note on $18 million, I think I said it was about $6 million in interest paid, out somewhere else. I don't know what our the required interest rate we would have to charge ourselves. That's what we need to talk about bond counsel, but it'd be a lot less than what we can get out on the market right now.
Okay.
And again, we get to keep it.
Mayor, I am in a similar boat as Brian, and you could probably tell by the question, although our names are not on the questions, which one I asked on this topic. I was adamant as we moved into this bond language, and I agree wholly with Brian that in listening to and hearing from constituents prior to the vote and post-vote, everyone knew that the majority of this up front was going for the fire station. So that's, to me, is a slam dunk. I think 90% certainly makes sense. The heartburn that I had with the 10% was I was adamant that we not place a percentage in the language of the bond vote. So the clarification from Ryan today was helpful because we did not do that. We did not hamstring that, and we left it more flexible. While I understand we can do whatever we want with the lost funds, I do agree when folks from the public are reading packets or they're looking and grazing, they're not looking at detail. I'm one of those. I only have so much time to look at those types of things. I don't want there to be a misconception, especially to our outside partners that may latch on to a 10% language and then come back to us with, requests or concerns that we're not at 10% or things like that. I just think that it does create confusion, not internally, because like you said, we can vote and spend those funds on whatever we want. But the outside view, he brings up a good point. I think we need to be cautious with that, and I think a reword would be useful.
So would it be helpful just not to have a separate spot?
Well,
have separate funding put out there? I guess what I'm trying to understand is what's the goal? Because a name or a word is just a name or a word. I mean, is it a matter of like having dollars set aside that are not specifically going to the fire station every year?
No, I think the 90% Cherry Street Firehouse Fund, calling that out serves a purpose. It's the identifying it as, hey, the other 10% are going to this specific project or this specific fund is the verbiage that needs to be changed. And in order to do that, to Ryan's recommendation, we can change it to say lost fund. And then if we want to dedicate that 10% to the neighborhood fund or 5% to capital improvements and 5% to neighborhood fund, however we want to do that, that allows flexibility that this council established and also put in within the language. So that would be my recommendation. And Grant, I don't know if we need to do something with that or if you just change it within the budget. But for me, for my seat, I would say Cherry Street Firehouse Fund, 90% as written in the budget, and then lost fund as opposed to neighborhood fund, 10%.
I do think it's semantics, Mayor. I do. Okay. I think it's as simple as that.
I got you.
Yeah. But I think the meeting in April, at least to me, that's going to be a great conversation with us. I'm actually excited to have that, to see what we come up with, and what we can partner with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it said something like lost project fund.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep, I got you.
Yep. Thank you all.
Okay, so yes.
Well, I just have a question about the property tax relief.
Yes.
Can you explain that a little better for me? How that applies to 50% to the levy, and can you just explain?
Sure. So based on this model, we would actually be diverting 90% of the local option sales tax fund to property tax relief. Some might call it property tax avoidance. And this is what I know Iowa City's working on. I believe Coralville's doing the same thing with the rec center, and the Des Moines Metro has used their local option sales tax for similar type purposes. But what we're showing here is without this revenue, and we move forward with the fire station project, firehouse project, your property taxes are going to go up to this level, and that I tried to. I know it's a lot of numbers, but in here there's
What page is that on, Ryan?
chart that shows
65 on the electronic packet.
Thank you.
Thank you. That will show you what the property tax rate would be if we borrowed for that and paid with it with debt service levy. And then it compares that to what it would be by funding it all with local option sales tax. And so, if you don't mind me moving over here. In this particular case, a residential property valued at $300,000 would pay about $1,700 less over the life of that loan, over the life of that, what was the original loan. So they're paying, that's the relief they're seeing because of the local option sales tax.
Because otherwise, we would borrow that money to get the fire station done.
Borrow it and pay it back with that debt service levy, which has a direct impact on your tax rate.
Got it.
And in dollar terms, you could say in year one, the city's putting $2.5 million towards property tax relief. Because that's what we're devoting to the firehouse project. Okay, so I'll maybe just give a brief conclusion here, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Thank you again. This was a great discussion, and thanks to the management team members who were able to be here tonight. We've now, I think, talked through in about 3 hours of, not tonight obviously, but combined the FY27 budget. I think we have a great direction on operations and capital projects. Based on everything we've talked about the last two meetings, our property tax rate for FY27 would be $11.84 per $1,000 in value. That's about 15 cents higher than last year. And the driver of that is the debt that came on this year for the final piece of the City Hall project that we borrowed for. And this had been in the model for a number of years, so we knew that was going to happen. But with any luck, with planning and using local option sales tax, that debt service levy should flatten out here in the years to come. So that's where we would be at in FY27. So next steps for us then is to put all of this data into the state's form. And not to bore you, but we have an internal software that we're required to use, and we put it in this model so that it's much easier to read. And now we'll transfer this data to the state forms. We'll bring those back to you along with the most recent model, changing the local option sales tax and going through it one more time and make sure there are any other refinements we need to make. And we'll have our first public hearing, I believe I said, is going to be in
March.
March. Thank you. You have that date, Tracy?
27th?
Great.
It's toward the end of
24th, March 24th.
24th.
So, yep.
And it's April 14th for the final.
Yep. Any final questions or thoughts before we?
Anyone watching, can you provide a quick snapshot on property taxes that will be assessed to homes, commercial projects here next year as a net effect of our rate that we're setting?
Yes.
That's also on page 100.
Yeah.
You got that there?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
So that's a good point. So despite the fact that the property tax rate would go up 15%, this is where Iowa's property tax system is pretty darn confusing, but the rollback, the residential rollback, dropped almost 3%. So when you look at that, the average, I shouldn't say the average, the median home value in North Liberty based on some census data is $300,000. A $300,000 home will pay about $81, almost $82 less in FY27 than they did in FY28. That's a direct result of the rollback that dropped almost 3%. Now, commercial is a little bit different because they own only a small portion, the first $150,000 of their value is subject to the rollback. The rest of it is at 90%. So a $500,000 valued business is going to pay about $6 more annually. And if it's a bigger, like a $1.5 million business, it'll pay about $140 a year more. So they will see an increase on the commercial side of things.
Thank you. I think it's really important when you hear that we're spending $18 million for something or $5 million for something else. The net effect on property taxes and what that means to us living here is really important. And those are all numbers that are in this packet as well.
Agreed, Mayor. And I would say in years past, because of the legislation and what the state sends to everyone to show in a very confusing fashion of what they're paying and what the property taxes are going to, I know there's a new bill at least introduced to try to clean that up. The mayor is trying to paint that picture very clearly here, of which we hope the state will be able to do that. He didn't even have a calculator in front of him, and he could do it. So that is my hope for the state, that they can clean that up, because we did have a number of constituents that came in here post those letters being sent that were very confused, who were told on the piece of paper that their taxes were going up 15%, and that was not the case. So, Mayor, I appreciate you pointing that out. Maybe we can point back to this meeting and timestamp this meeting if those letters don't get changed for this year.
Thank you again. I think we're set, and we'll bring those documents to you in March. Thank you.
There wasn't anything left on special revenues. We covered that.
We did through, as we were talking
That's
through
what I thought.
projects. Yeah.
Okay. We will move on to item 11, which is animal control ordinance. And this is item A is a public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the animal control ordinance. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak on this item? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and move on to item B, which is first consideration of ordinance number 2026-02. This is an ordinance amending chapters 55, 56, and 57 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of North Liberty, Iowa, concerning and reorganizing provisions for animal control, pet licenses, and dangerous and potentially dangerous animals. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Wason, seconded by Fortney. You guys have any questions?
I just was reading that. I was like, wow, this stuff is really messed up.
Many small towns turn to the same basic code providers for, we need a city code. Well, let's go to someone who writes city codes. And so there's lots of a good solid base. And then we grow and we identify new needs, and we open up a dog park, and we have this and that, and we add a thing here and a thing there, and all of a sudden our code starts looking like Frankenstein's monster. And so this is just an effort to clean it up. We have, in chapter 55 has 29 subsections. I've narrowed it down to 10. In categories that make sense, so you can find what you're looking for. There's nothing substantive or of value that's being removed here, and I'm happy to talk about any specific concerns you might have. But this is just reorganizing this so that I don't go crazy every time I look at it, frankly, and making it a better resource for the public.
We don't want you to go crazy.
I mean,
Thank you. Any other questions? Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Fortney,
Aye.
Park,
aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Leibold,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 12 is SST for Evergreen Future Land Use Map Amendment and Zoning Map Amendment. And item A is Planning Commission and staff recommendations. Russ.
Thank you, Mayor. If you can see on the screen there's several requests here. I've drawn those blue lines there to show what the requested zonings are, to give you an idea of what the request is. We can go down a little bit further, and I can show you a different map that kind of overlays that with current zoning. Right there, it's a little smaller on the left, but the large purple area is currently RM12. There's some RM8, which is the lighter purple, and the yellow is RS6. So the portion on the left would be RM14. I would note that recent rezoning of the Cedarhurst Assisted Living Facility to RM21, so a little bit higher density makes sense to me. The area along the north and kind of coming around to the east along would be RD10. And then there would be an area along the east property line and south property line that would remain RS6. And then a small area in the middle would be C2, expand that C2 area. You can see on the right-hand side, the current future land use map designation is urban low intensity. I remember at the time we did the original rezoning, we kept the urban low intensity, even though we had some higher requests like the RM12. But I am recommending that we change it just to, if the council wants to move forward with approval, to change those maps to reflect the zoning that would be changed as well. Again, here's just a couple of UMI and UHI descriptions. The UMI, urban medium intensity, densities of 7 to 14 dwelling units to the acre. If you go to UHI, it's generally commercial or 14 units to the acre or higher. Whoops, one back this way. We had a virtual Good Neighbor meeting on December 18th. One person outside city staff attended. There is an objection in the file. It pertained to really about noise, I think, as opposed to just really objecting to the rezoning. They did indicate some people were starting earlier, so I just responded that, if they're starting before our noise standards, please, give us a call and we'll take care of that. Just a couple of other things that are going on here. I mean, Alexander Way would run through the property. The bottom left just shows a circle of where Alexander Way would come through the property. And Alexander Way, as we know, is a planned collector street that extends from actually south of Forever Green Road all the way to north of Penn. And actually the map on the right is the Coralville land use plan. It actually shows Alexander Way, named by whatever they call it, all the way down to Highway 6. So it's a pretty significant corridor in our community and Coralville. So secondly, we were a little concerned with how this subdivision would lay out. This is a concept plan. The preliminary plat would come to P&Z in its February meeting, and then at final reading for City Council of the rezoning. We were a little concerned of, how would this lay out in the overall plan for the community? And so MMS is working on both projects for this subject property as well as the Hodge development, Michelson to the east. And then they laid out a concept for that middle property. Admittedly, there's no input from that property owner, so things could change. But this is generally how we would expect the grid to be laid out with those connections. And we were generally agreeable to this concept. And just, you may ask, and John can talk about this a bit more, just, what is the need for this request? I mean, we did this rezoning. We saw no action on the property. I'm not quite sure what happened with the ownership group, but it seems like they are motivated to move forward. And again, maybe John can talk a little bit more about that. There were two findings, one with respect to the land use amendments, and then the second with respect to the rezonings. On January 6th, the Planning Commission accepted those two listed findings and forwards a request to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, and that vote for approval was unanimous. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Russ. I've got a question. It could go in any of these next sections, so I apologize if it seems a little bit out of order as we get there. But you had a little bit of a question about Alexander Way and running through there. With these potential rezonings, how will access look on Alexander Way, especially in that RD10 and potentially RS6 up there?
You can kind of see Alexander Way is the road that you see it intersecting with Forever Green Road, and then it kind of meanders to the northeast and then exits kind of due north at the north end property line. So the areas on the west, which would be the RM14, would have limited access, and then the commercial on the kind of to the southeast would have limited access. Most of the properties would have access on, or would face those side streets, if you will. And it's only as you get to the kind of the north end of the property that you see a couple of RS6 lots that would have frontage on it. So excellent question, but it's something we considered. We do have a planned 8-foot wide trail on the west side of Alexander Way. And so we really want to limit individual homeowners from having driveway accesses along there. So that's another reason why we thought it was preferable to have something that was like an RM district, because you can have townhomes or multifamily that have development that's internal and not actually kind of having driveway accesses off of that street.
So, but those 3 lots that are in the northeast corner of this division right now, they will all 3 have, well, at least 2 of them will have a driveway.
That's
right?
correct.
Okay. And then we don't know it yet. You said a moment ago, but as we go north into this next one, we're going to be going through what looks like, potentially RM10 up there, and those are all going to be driveways.
Yeah, let's see, go to this. So you kind of see on the map, there's just a small area of the RD10, which would be the 0 lot lines. But as you go north of that section, that's all RS6. So those lots would have less density, but yes, they would front on Alexander Way. Sometimes it's not always practical to prevent everything from having, not having direct access on that street, especially how that kind of street grid holds out. We've seen quite a bit of RM and RD zoning on the west towards Kansas, and as we progressed east, we felt it was important to kind of hold the line with single family such that these middle properties would transition to more of a single family development pattern.
Yeah. My only concern is future access to Alexander Way. We're having all of these access points from those driveways. Can there be more setback requirements for the homes or the buildings from the street in that case? Because, there are very few exceptions I can think of around here where we might have a collector street like it's North Liberty Road or Jones Boulevard where nobody has a driveway access. Jones Boulevard being the exception, but those are legacy properties on the west side right there. So is there anything that we can add to the zoning, or is it already there, that requires setbacks to be further from the road than what there might be, say, at your house or my house?
I mean, it's certainly something we could talk about. I will say, as a collector street, and I guess the probably more recent example, Juniper going through Arlington Ridge is a collector street. Yeah. There are several that have access off of there. So it's not, I would say, examples like Jones, and your point is valid, is probably in what we would call this. So this would be what we would call like more of a neighborhood collector. Something like Jones is something I would call like a major collector street. We're trying to limit access off of that. We do, with respect to collector streets, there is a little bit more right-of-way width along those areas. So there is a built-in, and the road is a little bit wider, but certainly something we could talk about. Yeah. I know, especially with how the road kind of lines up, especially with this property and the property to the north, you are getting into a limited lot depth situation. So as you increase that front yard, the rear yard kind of decreases.
Yeah. And I understand your point about this being really a neighborhood collector street. If people are going to dump down to Forever Green Road, or they're going to go onto Penn Street as it kicks up that way. So it won't be a terrific pass-through opportunity like Jones Boulevard might be right now, or Kansas.
Yeah, and some of the things we've talked about with the developer to the north, Mr. Alan Marks, is, you see kind of a concept for a roundabout. That was something we insisted on there. That would be the intersection of Remley and Alexander Way. And, those concerns we've heard about traffic calming since I've been here. So that was something we asked for, and Alan showed it on there. So we're trying to implement things in curvy streets just to, try and get people to slow down and treat it like it's a neighborhood street.
Okay. Thank you. And apologize if I put that in the wrong spot.
Great questions.
Are there any other questions for Russ right now? If not, I'll move on to item B, which is resolution number 2026-07. And this is a resolution amending the 2022 North Liberty Comprehensive Plan connected to Tomorrow Future Land Use Map for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa, from urban low intensity, ULI, to urban high intensity. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Park, seconded by Leibold. Are there any questions? Tracy, could I have roll call, please?
Leibold,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item C is a public hearing regarding proposed rezoning. That's coming up next. Are there anyone in the audience wishing to provide comment for that?
Good evening, John Marner with MMS Consultants. I'll just briefly add to address one of the things that Russ mentioned during his presentation. There has been a conscious effort. There's a little more interest in them moving forward as soon as possible or fairly soon here, hopefully this year, with construction development of the property. They have some interest in the single family lots and the zero lots and the multifamily and the commercial for that matter. So this would provide that initial connection from Alexander, from Forever Green towards the south, again, pointing towards the north and the preserve and some of those areas up by the Centennial Park. The other thing I'd add, we did really try to pay attention to limiting the number of access points to Alexander for that reason. Being aware of what was on the approved preliminary plat and the zoning immediately to the north, and also up in the preserve where you've got those single family RS6 lots right on Alexander, but then limiting it to those two that are in that northeast corner as best as possible. And then to the other point about the street grid, again, that's conceptual in nature, but just to show the general opportunity to connect to some of those stub streets on the east side in Michelson Addition. Thinking through things ahead, a little bit ahead of time. Certainly not a set in stone. There's some opportunities to do some different things there as somebody starts to look at that property. And I'm available for any questions if you have any.
Any questions for John? Thanks for those. Thanks for that context. I'll close public hearing and move on to item D, which is first consideration of ordinance number 2026-03. And this is an ordinance amending the zoning map district designation for certain property located in North Liberty, Iowa from RS6 single unit residence district, RM8 multi-unit residence district, and RM12 multi-unit residence district to R6 single unit residence district from RS6 single unit residence district, RM8 multi-residence residence district, and RM12 multi-unit residence district to RD10 two-unit residence district from RM12 multi-unit residence to RM14 multi-unit residence district, and from RM8 multi-unit residence district and RM12 multi-unit residence district to C2 highway commercial district. Could I please have a motion for consideration?
You repeat.
And
Could you repeat
can we shorten this? I have to do this too many times.
So moved.
Can you repeat that?
Yes, I'd be happy to. Paul, you
Second.
seconded Wason's motion, by the way. Thank you. Grateful for you. Are there any other questions?
It really is kind of putting everything together. That's the way it just needed to kind of redefine where our original plan was, just because as you start putting streets and everything in it.
Yeah, and you know, we've had a couple of things happen around it and just kind of started to make sense to me. And I think Mr. Hiron and myself talked, you know, the commercial area kind of in the middle is kind of like, you know, boy, what's up with that? But, you know, it's right on that street that's close to Forever Green Road, and thought, you know, if there's a great opportunity for those frontage commercial parcels, and, you know, that area could be used for either multifamily or even additional parking for a really good use on that frontage. But I mean, it's going to be a pretty significant intersection in our city.
Yeah.
Tracy, how about a roll call, please?
Leibold,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 13 is zoning code ordinance amendment, and item A is a public hearing regarding proposed amendments to the zoning code. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to provide comment? I will close that public hearing and move on to item B, Russ, which is staff and planning commission recommendations.
Okay. In my opinion, the highlight of the evening, of course, but just a small ordinance. I know there's a couple of new members since a couple of years ago. we did a very large zoning code update, which is essentially a rewrite that reorganized a lot of things that made changes we'll talk about tonight, and then future changes a lot easier in the code that have been really helpful. And this one kind of does three things. Number one is just amend a couple of definitions. There's always a couple of irrelevant ones that just have a definition but reference nothing in the zoning ordinance, and let's get rid of those. They make no sense. Others are amending language that pertains to what we're trying to accomplish with this ordinance, and then clarifies a couple of definitions while we're in there, such as like private garage, which again, just private garage, really understand what it means, but it just other contextual references in the code just didn't make sense. Number two is again we have a use, we have uses in the zoning ordinance, a use table, and then we have use standards. We have individual standards that apply to each of those uses, and that's when I talk about the reorganization of the zoning code. It makes it easy if we want to apply certain standards to individual uses if we want, and that becomes a pretty powerful tool in our code, as opposed to just a general requirement, such as 60% masonry, for example. That's just a general requirement without much other design consideration. What we're trying to do here is provide architectural interest in different ways that are, and when, I've had conversations over the past several years about masonry, it's like, why does the city require 60% masonry? And my answer was, it's easy from an administration standpoint, right? You just 60% masonry. That's a pretty easy metric to accomplish, and it's done pretty well. I think we have a very nice built environment in the city. It's done really well. I think the conversation I've had, at least, and this is kind of dipping our toes into it, is would there be consideration to lessening that masonry requirement? And the answer from my perspective is yes. But we want to address other things in the code, of not just say, okay, let's just reduce from 60 to 40. I think there's other things that we would want to do, particularly with large scale buildings, to break up that mass. You have building projecting outward, and we call them kind of breaks. You have upward changes in elevation that add visual interest to a large mass building. And then also increasing the masonry requirements in residential districts. For multifamily and residential districts, we require masonry on the elevations that face a street. That's it. We would include those to wrap around the entire building. And I would also duplicate the language for multi-unit buildings to assisted to what we call a residential care facility, which is nursing home care facilities and things like that. We had low standards for the Cedarhurst, and it turned into me kind of, in a way, begging, so to speak, hey, we really think this is an important corridor. Let's just add them to the code. That makes life so much easier. And you just, a lot of times they're willing to work with you developers, but they could say, nope, we're not going to do it. We want to meet code. And it's just easier to put it in the code. I can point to the code and they can say, okay, no problem. Just a couple of examples to kind of talk you through the mindset. This is a building on Kansas. We should be familiar with it, adjacent to Landon. High amount of masonry, but at least this section and the southern section's a little bit better, but just a kind of a flat building, very high amount of masonry, but just visually a little bit boring, just because it's just flat. There's no projections coming out. There's no projections going up. So again, a nice building. I just think there's a couple of things that we could have done a little bit more. And again, the goals are allow a little bit more flexibility and to break up some of that massing. Here's an example of the ROA multifamily. I actually think this is a pretty good example. This is residential, but you have 16.8% area of the entire facade that's window glazing, 16.94% masonry. So it meets the 25%, it's a little above. But it does a really good job of the roof shapes are different. There's a lot of projections, and it adds a lot of visual interest, in my opinion. I think it was pretty well done. Here is the Emery Place. This is a residential building. I took this morning, and wow, it was cold out there. 20.5% window glazing, 21.51%. And let me mention, right? Anytime we have a masonry requirement, we give you credit for any glazing in your building. So that kind of as the window glazing ratio goes up, the required masonry goes down. And so you have 21.5% masonry overall, 42%. So when we're talking about going from a 60% masonry to a 40% masonry, this is a product that could be built. Again, this is, I think, a pretty good example. It has a lot of breaks in the facade, a lot of projections, a lot of insets, and a lot of vertical changes. I thought they did a pretty good job with this building. But that's, to me, is a better standard. This is with less masonry than something like that. And that's the goal of what we're trying to do.
Can I speak a little bit about the cladding requirement?
For sure.
Just for a little bit of background, when we're talking about masonry, that's what goes on the outside of a building. But the state has requirements that have been put in place, or prohibitions about what cities can and can't do. So we don't have any requirements for residential. We can't say what goes on the outside of a residential use. Except that it has to conform with what's in the building code, right? It has to be safe to use for home. For single-family duplexes and then multifamily of 12 units or less. So this masonry requirement for residential uses is for only those residential units, multifamily, that has more than 12 units. That's what we can require. And so don't worry that this is going to be in everyone's neighborhood where we have to wrap around 40% masonry in every house. This is just multifamily and big multifamily. I wanted to clarify that. If that's, and I'll step up here. Tozer, thanks.
Just a couple of examples of just some things when I look at around the community. This is the new building built at the corner of Penn and Ranshaw. I thought this is one of the more outstanding buildings built in our community recently by the Hunter Group. Just some things you'll see in the code of what I was trying to accomplish. There's a nice finish of what I call the top. A lot of breaks, a lot of window glazing, a lot of vertical changes, a lot of horizontal changes. I thought they did a really good job of here. But we're trying to take those things that you look at and say, wow, that looks really nice. Okay, why does that look really nice? Let's apply some of those standards to what we're doing in multifamily. And then obviously the Green State building, just a high level of glass that makes this, I think, a really elegant building. And I would argue that even the masonry that's on here, while it looks nice, is less important just because they've used so much glazing. So just to kind of show you, if you increase the level of glazing, that masonry kind of becomes less important in these large scale buildings just because it's such a nice material. And then the third one was talk to a homeowner about a swimming pool they wanted to put in their rear yard. Currently, the zoning ordinance says the swimming pool has to be located in the rear yard. This is a really unfortunate incident where their entire rear yard was an easement. And they, we talk about variances. Well, you can get a variance, but the standards of approval are so difficult. I just didn't feel comfortable saying, well, just go get a variance. We don't change the code. I always look at opportunities to say, is the code something that maybe should be changed? It's not a very common circumstance, but the rear yard is take the back edge of the house and that area between the back of the house and the rear property line. And so if somebody wanted to put if you had kind of a cove, if you will, like an L-shaped house, and you wanted to put the pool in the L, you couldn't do it. It's got to be in the rear yard. And so in this case, we allow detached garages in the side yard. Being able to meet the setback for the main house. So I just took those standards and said, okay, if you want to put a pool in the side yard, you can do it. You've got to meet that increased setback similar to a detached garage. We don't have any objections to this request. And the January 6th, the Planning Commission, there was one finding that achieves consistency with approval standards. They accepted that listed finding and forwards this request to the City Council with a recommendation for approval, and that vote was unanimous. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks, Ross. That was an exciting part of our meeting today. Thank you for taking us there. Do you guys have any questions for Ross before we move on?
Just a quick one. I know Grant touched on it, but I kind of missed this, and thanks for answering all my questions prior to the meeting. But when it comes to residential houses, we're saying right now they require 25% masonry.
As Grant had mentioned, state law currently prohibits us from regulating anything on exterior cladding on a 12-plex or less. So we cannot require colors, masonry, or unless there are exceptions like historic districts or a large overlay district or something like that. But yeah, we can't. We're not able to.
So that requirement to carry it all the way around is only for 12 plexes and up.
A 13-plex or greater, yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Russ, with the pool in the side yard, my concern would be fencing. So right now, most of the HOAs in town will say you can't have your fence come more than a quarter of the way up your side yard because nobody wants to look at fence in the front. So you put a pool in the side yard, they're going to be required to have a fence. What's that going to do visually on the side? I would have concern about that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, if you can't, I mean, we would rely on your HOA, and if your HOA says you can't have the fence in that location, that just means you can't have a pool in that location either. I think the circumstance would be rare. I certainly could happen if that somebody would put their pool like right up along here's the front of my house and the house is here and I'm going to locate the front there just because it needs to be, you need to have access to kind of the rear of the house. And the example I've talked about was just exactly what I talked about, just kind of like an L-shaped house where the rear yard was an easement where it's just natural to kind of come out of the back of the house and access that part of it. Again, with everything, it just allows a little bit more flexibility. I just don't think it's going to be a common thing in our community.
And then back to your comment about, at some point, you felt like you were begging to build it to look nice. That was part of my question that you helped answer. I want us to explore those options because I go back to South Dubuque Street and the development there, and we were really up here begging them. Please don't use duplicative design. Please don't duplicate your exterior cladding colors next to each other, and we were begging them to do that. I think we're past that. I think with these larger developments, especially there on South Dubuque Street, that is an artery coming into the community as an entry point. We should be over begging folks to make it look good.
While the state prohibit us, and like what I said, it's easy to regulate from our end of masonry. Yeah. It's easy for the state to prohibit. Like we'll just say you can't do masonry, but we can regulate other things with respect to building design. We already do it with garage lifts. We can explore things with design to break up anti-monotony, things looking all the same. That is totally within our power to do. It's a challenging to write, and you've got to write. You can't just say, we don't want the two to look the same. I have to actually be prescriptive of different means this and the same means this. But it is totally within our purview or the city council, if you wish to move forward with something like that, to adopt those regulations to kind of break up that monotony. And we're starting to see some of these blocks on Berkshire. I know there's a lot of zero lot lines that they all look the same.
Yeah, even something saying no identical houses next to each other, you get into the minor changes in the I'm not touching you game where you have it's technically not identical. So as Russ saying, this sort of prescriptive standard is difficult to write well, and something that is a rule that applies fairly that will hold up and be something that people could look at and understand what they can and can't do.
Yeah, I want to be clear. We want to be open to development. It's not about being difficult. Yeah. We've made major changes since your arrival here in making this a more welcoming place to set your business, to build your home, to bring your commercial here, and we certainly want to do that. We want to work with the builders and the developers and not hamper them. But we also want we want a nice city.
And I appreciate your comment. I agree entirely. And I think once you, like a townhouse, for example, you see the newer ones in Water Tower Place that are just kind of the same townhouse, I think, or in the Watts development in the Preserve is just, I think if you say, okay, the building form, the envelope kind of stays the same, the box, if you will, you're just kind of changing some elements on the exterior to just make it look a little bit different. It's really just what we would be talking about. And I think those subtle changes are impactful. You really notice when something looks exactly the same all the way through. But if you change a roof line, here's a gable or something like that, or the gable shifts to that other side, I think that is something that we could do.
I think we've also been fortunate to have our developers understand what our preferences are, and they've been good partners to work with. And that I don't anticipate that would ever change. The expectation, the relationship, the partnership has always been very, very well received on both ends. So, thank you for the additional work that you've done with this, though, too.
Thank you.
We'll move on to item C, which is first consideration of ordinance number 2026-04, an ordinance amending Chapter 167 of the North Liberty Code of Ordinances governing definitions, Chapter 168 of the North Liberty Code of Ordinances governing use standards, and Chapter 169 of the North Liberty Code of Ordinances governing other accessory uses. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Fortney, seconded by Smith. Any further questions? Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Fortney. Aye. Wason.
Aye.
Smith.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Leibold.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 14 is the fund balance policy, and this is resolution number 2026-08, a resolution approving the general fund financial reserve policy for the city of North Liberty, Iowa. Could I first have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Park, seconded by Fortney. Brian, do you want to provide any
I'd love to.
overview?
We talked a little bit about this in our last budget session, but what we're proposing is increasing the ceiling on the general fund reserve to 35%. Right now, we have a floor of 25, ceiling of 30. We're proposing the additional 5% because we have a surplus and have the ability to do it, and because we are not sure what's ahead in terms of property tax reform, and so we want to have some cushion here if we have to make some rather quick adjustments to upcoming budgets. I would note that the governor's proposal, property tax proposal, limits cities to having a 10% reserve.
Oh.
10% reserve,
Oh, okay. Got it.
which would be devastating, simply because bond ratings would tank. I mean, bond counts, or the bond, Moody's and other rating agencies rely heavily on surplus funds, reserve funds, when they give a rating. So it could be pretty detrimental. But this policy is solid, and we're recommending approval.
We don't recommend any other kind except
That's
solid
right.
ones. You guys have any questions? Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Fortney. Aye. Smith.
Aye.
Leibold.
Aye.
Wason.
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And item 15 is FY25 general fund balance allocation. This is resolution number 2026-09, a resolution approving allocation of excess funds from the FY 2025 general fund balance according to the general fund financial reserve policy. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Wason, seconded by Park. Do we have any questions, or do we need any clarification on this?
Ryan, what's the 50 for Quail Ridge? Is that baseball?
Yeah,
fencing?
so we actually have funding in the FY26 budget for improvements to Quail Ridge, and we're requesting, we think we're going to come up short on that, but the projects are adding the sidewalk. Right now, we have a sidewalk to the field, and we want to bring it around the park. It's a nice connection. It would connect into a neighborhood, and then adding parking. And so this 50,000 will help us resurface the existing lot and then add a smaller lot to the west.
Wasn't there funds for fencing the outfield of that ball field?
Yeah, that's been done, I believe.
Okay, so that was an earlier project.
We did that
This one-
this year, this spring, this fiscal year, early this fiscal year.
Okay, all right.
And the splash pad mentioned on here is the Centennial.
Yes, yeah, it would be just putting that in the project fund so we could borrow less. That project.
And then the workforce housing project, that's our contribution to the building that we approve.
Yeah, we would set that aside. It probably would be set aside for a couple of years because we are last money in. So they have to have everything done at the state level before we contribute. And what I mean by that, they have to be fully constructed before we contribute.
So see the building inspector vehicle on there? You're probably, don't be annoyed with me. Is that additional to what we budgeted for?
No, we didn't budget. That was included in our conversation with the idea that we would fund it with the surplus.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's not actually in the FY '27. You don't see it in the model that way.
got it.
Great questions. Thanks for that input there too, Ryan. Could I have a motion or Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Courtney. Aye. Leibold,
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 16 is the Forever Green Road and Jasper Avenue project, and this is resolution number 2026-10, a resolution accepting the bid and authorizing execution of the contract for the Forever Green Road and Jasper Avenue Improvements Project, North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved. Sorry. Second.
Moved by Fortney, seconded by Park. There were some questions ahead of the meeting. Would anyone care to repeat them out loud?
Mayor, mine was, I just hadn't seen that name of the contractor before, so due diligence, we just want to make sure, if we haven't used them before, we've reached out to cities that have, because this was a substantially less bid. Low bid is great until it's not.
And the answer was?
We are very confident with this firm. They do work all over the state and a bunch for the state, and Josiah provided some information that they're close right now. That's why you're seeing some of the staging costs and mobilization costs much less than what we budgeted for. So we actually feel pretty fortunate that this company was low bid, and look forward to working with it.
Yeah, I saw that PCI was pretty close, and they're pretty reputable. So I figured that if they're pretty close, then
Yep. Good to have these questions out loud. I appreciate you guys doing that. Are there any others? Tracy, could we have roll call, please?
Courtney. Aye. Leibold,
Aye.
Wason,
aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Park.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 17 is mowing assessment, and this is resolution number 2026-11, a resolution assessing amounts owed to the city of North Liberty, Iowa to individual property taxes. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Wason, seconded by Smith. Are there any questions?
Mayor, how many attempts do we make on those? Or Ryan?
Attempts. I don't know that answer.
Okay.
We do make a good faith attempt to collect from them, and if we get no response, this is the next step.
Just there's a happy balance there, right? Enough attempts to give them opportunity, but not make it a burden financially to the city.
Correct.
Okay.
We would much rather have the payment
Yeah.
than make the assessment.
Are a lot of these empty lots?
No.
No, people's houses?
See, Russ
Or
is the
land.
enforcement guy.
Yeah, it's not very common in this community, which is good, but we just have a few that and again, it's never a go out and mow type situation. It's always notice, here's the code, and then we go and do it. Especially when we get into growing season, and rightfully so, neighbors really don't like to look at high weeds, and it's something you have to take action on, or it's just gonna, especially if you get a lot of rain, just gonna get out of control real quick.
I would add, this is not something that we go around searching for either. These are calls we get from neighbors generally who want some action done.
Tracy, how about roll call?
Leibold,
Aye.
Smith,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Courtney. Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. And item 18 is right-of-way vacation, and this is our second consideration of ordinance number 2026-01, an ordinance vacating a portion of Front and Dubuque Street right-of-way in North Liberty, Iowa. Could I have a motion for consideration, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Park, seconded by Fortney. Any questions? Tracy, roll call, please.
Smith,
Aye.
Park,
Aye.
Wason,
Aye.
Fortney,
Aye.
Leibold.
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. Item 19, old business.
Actually, I did had one more thing that if Ryan could just point out the Jasper Road and Forever Green, the breakdown of Tiffin's cost of that, because that's not all of.
Yes, we are, hold on, I want to bring up the executive orders here, but you're right, that is not all of ours. In fact, a good chunk of it is,
A little over 1.5 is Tiffin,
thank you.
and North Liberty is about 3.5, roughly.
So just, I think it was important to kind of throw it out there that, we're just doing the project to get it done and they'll reimburse us.
Well, and if I could elaborate just a second more, I know we've been here fairly long tonight, but, one of the components of the property tax bills, all three of them, are the state asking, well, what are cities doing, or what are counties and cities doing to work together? I mean, in the last few years, we've had multiple joint projects or programs with our neighbors. So we're doing a lot of what's being asked already.
I'll move on to item 20, new business. And just one reminder, tomorrow night is the MPO meeting that I've talked about a couple of times. And if you can make it, it's at 4:30 down at the Iowa City City Hall, council chambers down there. Brian and I will be there. Yes, sir.
I will too.
Okay.
I also, part of our animal control ordinance had to deal with dangerous dogs and keeping them in a process. I know Corville, had run into an issue where there was a, dangerous dog that had to be euthanized and whatnot. So I would just encourage people that, to check that, at least that part of the animal control ordinance out, because we do have a process for that.
Anything else?
Mayor, for new business, Thursday will be Better Together 2030 Excellence in Action Awards. Excited about that. And North Liberty has been well received in award recipients in the years past, so we'll see what this year brings. And then lastly, I did bring an exhibit that I'll pass around to my colleagues if they're interested. Paul sits on the Iowa City Area Sports Commission. That commission reports to the DMO board that I am a part of, and they shared a list of upcoming events of which they are out selling our communities, not just Iowa City or Coralville, but ours as well. There's 4 full pages here of events, everything from girls wrestling state championships to women, the NCAA women's wrestling championships, Savannah Bananas, all those things. It's just really good to see when we talk about Lost and the revenue that's going to come in from that. It's right here. It's all of these types of events that are going to come and enjoy our communities, but also share in those costs. So if you're interested, I have that for you this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Problem. Thank you. Appreciate your time there on that. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Leibold.
Second.
Park. I could see it coming out of your mouth. Sorry, Brian. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you all.